Let me be straight with you right now. Lewis Hamilton just did something that nobody in Formula One saw coming at this speed. Not the pundits, not the critics, not even, according to some reports, the people inside the Ferrari garage who were quietly wondering if they had made a mistake signing him. Because what happened at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya was not just a race win, it was a statement. A loud, unavoidable, wheel-to-wheel statement that one of the greatest racing drivers who ever sat in a Formula One car has absolutely not finished writing his story. And here is the part that should make every person who wrote Lewis Hamilton off after his 2025 season feel at least a little awkward right now. This win did not come out of nowhere. The signs were all there. Most people just refuse to read them. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, why it happened, what it means for the championship battle, and what everyone who declared Hamilton finished owes him at this point. But here is the thing I want you to sit with before we get into all of that. There is one specific detail about how Hamilton and Ferrari approached the 2026 regulations that almost nobody is talking about, and it may be the single biggest reason why this win happened. I'm going to get to that, but first, let us talk about the 41 races that came before it and the noise that surrounded every single one of them. For a full year and a half, the Formula One world had been doing what it loves to do most, building a narrative and then refusing to let it go. The narrative was simple. Lewis Hamilton, seven-time world champion, arguably the most decorated driver in the history of the sport, had made a catastrophic career decision by leaving Mercedes after over a decade of dominance to join Ferrari. And on the surface, you could understand why that story took hold. His 2025 season with Ferrari was, by any objective measure, a difficult one. No podiums, no wins. A series of races where the gap between what Hamilton was doing and what the car seemed capable of was hard to explain in straightforward terms. And the internet, as it always does, took that gap and filled it with conclusions. He was done. He was too old. The reflexes were gone. The hunger was gone. He had gone to Ferrari for the money and the legacy and the romantic idea of winning in red, and it was never going to work because he had left it too late. That was the story, and it was everywhere. Now, I have to be honest here. I was not fully buying it. Not because I was blindly loyal to Hamilton, but because I have watched enough sports in my life to know that when a truly elite competitor joins a new environment and struggles in year one, the immediate conclusion that they are finished is almost always the wrong conclusion. Almost always. History is absolutely littered with examples of champions who had one bad year in a transition and then came back to remind everyone exactly who they were. But the critics were loud, and they were confident, and when you have 41 races without a win piling up, even the most patient observers start to ask questions. So, let us answer those questions properly. The 2026 Formula One regulations represented one of the most significant technical overhauls the sport has seen in years. New power unit regulations, new aerodynamic concepts, a fundamental shift in how these cars generate downforce and manage energy deployment. And here's where it gets interesting, because according to multiple reports and analysis from sources who have been tracking Hamilton's telemetry and simulator work, the specific characteristics of the 2026 regulations happen to align in an unusually precise way with Hamilton's driving style. Now that's not luck, or at least it is not entirely luck, because what insiders have reportedly described is a situation where Hamilton was not just sitting in the Ferrari simulator, clocking laps, he was actively involved in the development process in a way that influenced the direction of the car. Think about that for a moment. This is not a driver who showed up, got in the car, and hoped for the best. According to sources within the paddock, Hamilton's input into the SF26's development was substantial. His feedback from simulator sessions, his communication with engineers, his understanding of what the 2026 regulations demanded in terms of driving technique, all of it, according to reports, fed into the machine that carried him to victory in Barcelona. And yet, for most of 2025, while all of that work was happening behind the scenes, the public narrative was that he was finished. Remarkable when you think about it. Truly remarkable. But we're only getting started, because the story inside the Ferrari garage goes much deeper than just simulator hours, and what it reveals about Hamilton as a person and a professional is genuinely fascinating. One of the more interesting sub-stories circulating around Hamilton's time at Ferrari, and it's important to note that some of this is based on reports rather than official confirmation, is the cultural impact he has apparently had inside the Maranello operation. Now, Ferrari is one of the most iconic and, let's be honest, complex institutions in motorsport.
The politics inside that garage have historically been about as straightforward as a 22-corner street circuit in Monaco. Drivers have come and gone. Champions have struggled there for reasons that had nothing to do with their driving ability. The environment, the expectations, the weight of the prancing horse on every decision, it has broken some very good people. And so when reports began emerging that Hamilton had not only adapted to that culture,
environment, but it actually transformed it in some way, I paid attention, because that is not a small thing. According to insiders, Hamilton arrived at Ferrari and immediately set about addressing not just the technical side of things, but the human side, the communication, the teamwork, the decision-making processes, and the reports that have emerged. Again, these are from sources and should be treated accordingly, suggest that the engineers and former colleagues who have worked alongside him now, and I am paraphrasing here, absolutely love the man. That is a phrase being used by people inside the operation according to these reports. Now, you can read that in a cynical way if you want. Some people will say, of course they say that after a win, but the accounts predate Barcelona. People were talking about the cultural shift Hamilton was driving inside Ferrari months before this victory, and that matters, because a driver who can make an entire engineering team more motivated, more cohesive, and more aligned is a driver who is going to extract more from the car. That is not sentiment. That is just how team sports work, and Formula One, for all its individual glory, is absolutely a team sport. Let me give you a sense of why this matters in a very practical way. When a driver has a strong relationship with his engineers, they communicate more openly. Problems get flagged faster. Solutions get implemented more efficiently. The trust that builds between a driver and his race engineers over time is genuinely one of the hidden performance variables in Formula One, and it is one that the television coverage rarely has time to dig into. Hamilton spent over a decade at Mercedes building exactly that kind of relationship with his team. When he moved to Ferrari, he had to rebuild it from scratch, in a new language speaking culturally, with people who had their own ways of doing things. And based on everything that sources are suggesting, he did not just rebuild it, he apparently elevated it. Now, here's something I find genuinely impressive from a purely professional standpoint, and I say this as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about how elite performers operate in high-pressure environments. The decision to invest that deeply in the relationships and the culture at Ferrari, rather than just focusing on personal performance metrics, is a sophisticated and mature approach to the problem. It is also an approach that younger Hamilton, the raw, incredibly fast, sometimes abrasive Hamilton of his early career, might not have taken. There is something almost poetic about the idea that the wisdom that comes with age and experience is exactly what made the difference here. The critics said his age was working against him. Reports suggest it might actually have been working for him in ways they never considered. And now we need to talk about the championship, because that is where things get genuinely complicated and, frankly, genuinely exciting. When Hamilton crossed the line in Barcelona, the championship standings got very interesting very quickly, because sitting at the top of the Drivers' Championship, according to current reports, is Andrea "Kimi" Antonelli, a name that will be familiar to anyone who has been following Formula One closely over the last couple of years, and a name that carries enormous significance when you consider who is second on that grid. Antonelli, for those who need a quick primer, is the young Italian driver who Ferrari and the broader paddock have been extremely excited about for some time. He's quick, he's composed for his age, and he's leading the championship. But here's the detail that makes this entire situation absolutely combustible from a Formula One politics perspective. Antonelli is Lewis Hamilton's former teammate, or at least he's connected to that Mercedes lineage in a way that makes the internal Ferrari dynamic genuinely fascinating to watch, because now you have a situation where the veteran, the seven-time champion who has been fighting to prove himself in red, has just taken a commanding victory in Spain, and he's chasing down a championship leader who represents everything that the critics said would replace him. And Ferrari, as a team, now has to navigate what could become one of the most delicate internal politics situations in recent memory. Do they back Hamilton for the title? Do they allow the championship to develop naturally? And what happens if these two drivers end up fighting each other for points at a critical stage of the season? These are not hypothetical questions. They are questions that the people inside Maranello are almost certainly having right now, and the answers will shape the rest of this Formula One season in ways that nobody can fully predict yet. Now, I want to be careful here because nothing has been officially confirmed about Ferrari's internal strategy for the remainder of the season, but sources have suggested that Hamilton's Barcelona victory has, in the words of one report, reopened both internal and external debates about whether Ferrari should be throwing its full weight behind his title challenge. And
And that is a loaded sentence, because throwing its full weight behind a driver in Formula One has a very specific meaning. It means priority on strategy calls. It means first access to new parts. It means, in extreme cases, team orders. And the history of Formula One is full of moments where a team making that kind of decision one way or the other has defined entire seasons, entire careers, and entire legacies. I'm not suggesting Ferrari is anywhere near that point yet, but the debate is happening, and the fact that it's happening is itself a testament to what Hamilton achieved in Barcelona. 6 months ago, the conversation was about whether he should retire. Now the conversation is about whether his team should reorganize its entire strategic approach
to the season around him. That is a shift of tectonic proportions, and we still have not gotten to the most important part of this story, which is what this moment means for Formula One itself, and what it tells us about how we, as fans and observers, talk about the end of a champion's career. Here is something that I think deserves honest examination, because it sits at the heart of what the Lewis Hamilton-Ferrari story is really about. We, as a sporting culture, are terrible at identifying when a great champion is finished, genuinely terrible. We see a down period, a bad season, a transition, a difficult adaptation, and we immediately reach for the most dramatic conclusion available. We say they are done. We say the fire has gone. We write the retrospectives while the person in question is still actively competing. And then, more often than we would like to admit, we look slightly foolish. And the reason we keep making this mistake is that we confuse circumstance with decline. Hamilton's 2025 season at Ferrari was difficult, that is a fact. But the circumstances of that season were also extraordinary. New team, new regulations coming, new engineers, new culture, new everything. Judging a driver's ability based on performance in those circumstances without accounting for the complexity of the transition is like judging a chef by the first meal they cook in a kitchen they have never worked in before, with ingredients they have never used before, for diners whose preferences they are still learning. It tells you something, but it does not tell you the whole story. And the critics who said Hamilton was finished based on that one season, without accounting for those circumstances, were, according to everything we now know, wrong. They were not wrong because Hamilton is magic. They were wrong because they applied a simple framework to a complex situation. And simple frameworks fail complex situations every time. There is a broader lesson here that I think applies well beyond Formula One. We live in a moment where the pressure to produce an opinion quickly, to stake a position, to declare someone finished or unfinished, to be first rather than right, is enormous. Social media rewards the hot take. The algorithm amplifies the bold claim. And in that environment, nuance gets squeezed out. The nuanced take on Hamilton in 2025 would have been, this is a complex transition. It is too early to conclude anything definitive. Let us see what happens when the new regulations bed in. That is the correct take, but it does not get many clicks. So instead, we got, he's finished, he's past it, he should have quit while he was ahead. And now, sitting here after Barcelona, those takes age the way milk ages in a car on a hot day in June. Not well. And I say that not to pile on to the critics, because honestly, the temptation to draw conclusions quickly is one that all of us feel. But I do think it is worth naming it clearly, because the Hamilton situation is a reminder that the most compelling sporting stories often refuse to be finished before the competitor in question is actually finished. And Lewis Hamilton, at this particular moment, is very much not finished. Let's bring this home, because there is one more thread in this story that I want to pull on before we wrap up, and it's the thread that I think will define the next chapter of this Ferrari season, and that is the question of legacy. Now, Hamilton already has a legacy that is secure, regardless of what happens from this point forward. 7 world championships, the all-time record for race victories, a career that redefined what was possible in the sport, and did so in ways that extended well beyond pure driving ability. That legacy is not going anywhere. But here's the thing about competitors of Hamilton's caliber. They are not interested in being celebrated for what they have already done. They are interested in winning the next race, the next championship, adding the next line to a record that makes most professional athletes look like they are playing a different sport.
And if the reports about Hamilton's mindset inside Ferrari are accurate, the deep engagement with the simulator, the investment in team culture, the relentless focus on aligning his driving style with the 2026 regulations, then what we are seeing is a man who has not come to Ferrari to take a victory lap on his reputation. He has come to win. And Barcelona was not the end of that story. It was, according to all available evidence, the beginning of it. The emotion on his face as he crossed the line was something else. He dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of what he had just achieved. And honestly, who could blame him? This was not just another win. This was redemption. This was validation. This was the culmination of 18 months of hard work, doubt, and perseverance. He dedicated the victory to the team and the fans, saying that they had never given up on him, even when he nearly gave up on himself. But here's where it gets really interesting, because this victory was not just about one race. It has completely changed the dynamics of the entire championship. Let's talk about the championship implications for a moment, because this is where the drama really kicks in. Heading into Barcelona, Kimi Antonelli was on an absolute tear. 5 consecutive race wins. The 19-year-old sensation was looking like he was going to waltz to the title in his first season with Mercedes. But then, in the closing laps of the Spanish Grand Prix, disaster struck. Antonelli, the 19-year-old sensation, was looking like he was going to waltz to the title in his first season with Mercedes. But then, in the closing laps of the Spanish Grand Prix, disaster struck.
Who was running in second place, suffered a mechanical failure that forced him to retire from the race. It was a cruel twist of fate, and it completely shifted the balance of power in the championship. Hamilton's victory, combined with Antonelli's retirement, slashed the points gap to just 41 points. That is nothing. In Formula One, that is a couple of bad weekends away from being a completely different ballgame. Hamilton is now second in the championship with 115 points, while Antonelli leads with 156, and George Russell, who finished second in Spain, is third with 106 points. The title race is well and truly alive, and that is a sentence nobody thought they would be saying at the start of this season. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due. Mercedes is still the team to beat. Their car has been phenomenal this season, and Antonelli has been nothing short of spectacular. But Ferrari has momentum, and in this sport, momentum is everything. Hamilton has now proven that he can win in that car. He has proven that he can beat the Mercedes drivers on pure pace, and he has proven that he is far from finished. According to reports, there are already discussions within Ferrari about whether they should throw their full weight behind Hamilton's title bid. It is a delicate situation, of course, because Charles Leclerc is still there, and he is a phenomenal driver in his own right. But when you have a 7-time world champion who is on a mission, you have to consider your options. But here is the thing that I find most fascinating about all of this. It is not just the driving, it is the transformation off the track. According to sources, Hamilton has become a completely different presence within the Ferrari garage. He has been credited with transforming the culture within the team. He is more involved, more communicative, and more collaborative than he was last year. Former colleagues and engineers reportedly absolutely love him now. It's a stark contrast to the tension and frustration that defined his first season. He has found his Italian Bono in race engineer Carlo Santi, a partnership that has been instrumental in his resurgence. And honestly, I think that is the key to all of this. Hamilton is not just a great driver, he is a great leader. And when he is happy, when he feels supported, when he has the right people around him, he is virtually unstoppable. The change in his race engineer has been a game changer. Santi replaced Riccardo Adami over the winter, and the difference has been night and day. Hamilton himself has described Santi as absolutely awesome. The communication is better, the understanding is better, and the results speak for themselves. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, the age factor.
For the past couple of years, everyone has been talking about Hamilton's age as if 41 is ancient in racing terms. But here's the reality. He is 41 years old, and he just won a Grand Prix against drivers who are half his age. He is the oldest winner of a Grand Prix since Jack Brabham in 1970. That is not a sign of decline. That is a sign of greatness. That is a sign of a man who has adapted, evolved, and found a way to stay relevant in a sport that is constantly changing. And let's be honest, the criticism he faced last year was overblown. Yes, he struggled, but so did the entire Ferrari team. The car was not competitive, the strategy was questionable, and the chemistry was off. It was not just a Hamilton problem, it was a Ferrari problem. But instead of pointing fingers, he took responsibility and went to work. He made changes, he demanded improvements, and he delivered results. That's what champions do. Lando Norris, who finished third in Barcelona, summed it up perfectly. He said that Hamilton can stick the middle finger up to all his doubters. And honestly, that's exactly what he did. He proved that the critics were wrong. He proved that he still has what it takes. And he proved that writing off a champion, especially one of his caliber, is a fool's errand. So what happens next? That's the million-dollar question. The season is far from over. There are still 17 races left, and while Hamilton is still 41 points behind Antonelli, he has proven that he can close that gap. The next few races will be crucial. Can Ferrari maintain this level of performance? Can Hamilton continue this run of form? And can he finally achieve that elusive 8th World Championship? It's all up for grabs. And honestly, that's what makes this season so exciting. Fred Vasseur, the Ferrari team principal, has tried to play down expectations. He has urged the team to stay calm and not get carried away, and he's right to do so. One win does not make a championship, but it does make a statement. It tells the world that Ferrari is back. It tells the world that Hamilton is back, and it tells the world that this season is far from over. Now, I want to give you my personal take on all of this, because as someone who has followed this sport for years, I can't help but admire what Hamilton has done. It would have been so easy for him to walk away. After everything he has achieved, after all the money, the fame, the records, he could have just retired and lived out his days as a legend. But he didn't. He chose to fight. He chose to prove himself all over again. And that, to me, is the mark of a true competitor. He's not doing this for the money. He's not doing this for the fame. He's doing this because he loves the sport and he still believes he can win. And in a world where athletes are often criticized for staying too long, Hamilton is showing us that age is just a number. Look, I'm not saying he's going to win the championship. Antonelli is too talented and Mercedes is too strong to just roll over. But I am saying that this season just got a whole lot more interesting. And I am saying that anyone who counts Lewis Hamilton out is making a massive mistake. Because if there's one thing we have learned from his career, it is that he thrives when the pressure is on. He thrives when people doubt him. He thrives when the odds are stacked against him. The championship battle is now open in a way that it was not before that race. Antonelli is still leading, and let's be absolutely clear, he is a formidable competitor who should not be underestimated by anyone. But Hamilton now has momentum. He has a car that, according to reports, suits his driving style in ways that are only going to become more apparent as the season develops. He has a team that, by multiple accounts, is fully invested in him, both technically and emotionally. And he has something that no amount of simulator work or engineering analysis can manufacture. He has the confidence that comes from crossing the line first. That confidence, in the hands of a 7-time world champion who has been quietly and methodically preparing for this moment for over a year, is a dangerous thing for the rest of the field. Personally, and this is my honest read of the situation, I think we're watching one of the more fascinating second acts in modern sporting history unfold in real time. Whether Hamilton can sustain this form and challenge for the championship is a question that only the races ahead can answer. But the fact that the question is now legitimately on the table after everything that was said and written about him over the last 18 months is itself one of the better sports stories of the year. And if you're a Formula One fan, regardless of which driver or team you support, you should be glad this story is happening, because sport at its best is exactly this, a reminder that the scoreboard is never final until the last lap is done. Lewis Hamilton just reminded the entire world of that in Barcelona, and something tells me he's not done reminding them yet. Stay with this one, because the next few races are going to tell us a great deal about where this season, and possibly Hamilton's entire Ferrari chapter, is actually heading.